Have you ever opened your desktop and thought, what is all this mess? Well, that was me. So I built FileTidy. FileTidy is a native file organizer that cleans up your clutter in your system in just one click. And this works on macOS and Windows. I'm still working on a Linux version. I first built it as a SQLite tool, but I then found out that most of the devs and freelancers I know personally face this same issue. So I decided to build a native GUI app that you also can run on your system to clean up your messy folders. All you have to do is select your desktop, downloads, or documents folder, and FileTidy automatically sorts this into clean categories. In this video, I'll be walking you guys through how I built it, challenges I faced, decisions I made, and stacks and tools I used in building this. If you prefer reading a document, I've also written a blog, so you can check out the blog in the description below. To make use of FileTidy, all you have to do is just go straight to your browser and go to filetidy.festo.app, take it to the landing page. Over here, you can decide to watch a preview which I have on my YouTube channel, or you can join the waitlist or download based on your operating system. So I'll go ahead and download for macOS. And down over here, you can see the instructions for installing on macOS. This is as a result of it not being authorized. Basically, it's as simple as it is. Just download the app. I'll go ahead and download it right now. And once the app has been downloaded, you can go straight to extracting the image file from extracting the app from the image file. So just go ahead and drag this into your applications and then open the application. So for first time users, if you're opening the app for the first time, it's over here. If you're opening the app for the first time, you will get this error saying FileTidy is damaged. This is as a result of it not being authorized yet. But yeah, all you have to do is just copy this command which I have documented here, paste it in your terminal, and run. For Windows users, you're not going to face this issue. It's going to run straight away. So now I can go ahead and open the app once again. To prompt you for access to your documents, downloads, and desktop folder, you can go ahead and do that. So this is FileTidy, very basic UI, nothing too fancy, just simple and straight to the point for an initial MVP. So here you have your desktop, here you have your documents, your downloads. I mean, this is my second display, so you wouldn't really see much on my desktop, but on my other display, there's a lot of images in my screenshot, or rather images on my desktop. So now I'll just show you a brief working version of FileTidy. So here I want to sort my desktop. I'll click on this. I've got a couple of folders and images here. I'll click on Start Tidy. You can see 1015 files has been processed. You can see that cluttered desktop is now just this spreadsheets, videos. I think I had just images will be on the other display. So yeah, that's just all about it. If you don't like what has been done, you can decide to revert the last sort. Just click on Revert Last Sort, and it undoes the last action, and you have your desktop as it was. So yeah, that sums it all up about how FileTidy works. You can also decide to maybe sort like a nested folder in your desktop. So for example, let me say I have screenshots over here. I can decide to sort just the screenshots directory instead of having to sort everything in the desktop. And screenshots directly have been sorted. I think screenshot is over here. Where's my other display now? Well, I can go ahead and revert the last sort as well. You can see just 61 files has been processed. I'll go ahead and revert the last sort. And everything is fine. So yeah, that's all about that. So yeah guys, for the backend logic I use .NET framework. The .NET framework allows you to develop applications for various platforms, such as web, mobile and desktop, cloud, AI and ML using similar code base. Then for the UI of the app, I used Avalonia UI. Avalonia UI works on top of .NET, enables you to build multi or cross-platform apps for various operating systems. You can also build you can also build mobile applications using this as well. Then for storing of the session histories, configuration and file operations, I used SQLite. One reason why I used SQLite was to keep storage of these things personal and on your systems. Nothing is synced or synchronized in the cloud. Everything lives on your system. The operation is stored on your system. Then I use GitHub Actions for auto deployment. So for example, let me say I'm pushing a new fix. I don't have to come and start deploying stuff myself. I already set up an action, or rather a workflow file which automates this stuff for me. It's over here in my FileTidy repository. So if there's any new version, this script is run and is deployed. Deploys a new version under releases here. So right now I've just got version 1.0.0. This is the test build, and there's the DMG file and the windows.zip file, which is for Windows users. So FileTidy consists of two core layers and two environments. The two core layers are FileTidy.core and FileTidy.data, and the two environments are CLI and GUI. So initially, when I built the app, I built it as a CLI2. So the CLI2 housed the sorting logic and the display logic. The display in the prompt, basically. So when I then got a request to build the GUI, I then had to extract this logic in the CLI to a core class library. So now, the reason why I did this was to reuse the same sorting logic for GUI, and maybe, for example, if I decide to expand this into an API for maybe other operations, I can use the same sorting logic. You had a core class library, which was then reused in the GUI. And then when I introduced the refat feature, that is the undoing of sorting, I introduced a new class library, which was the data class library, which we have over here as well. So the core class library interacts with the data library, while the CLI and GUI interacts with the core library. Sometimes you have to do certain operations directly using the data library, but I'm still going to refactor that and make sure that the core houses every single thing any of these environments need to make use of. I'll just go ahead and show you guys the code and how it works, basically. So over here in my FileTidy project, I've got a couple of files and folders. You can ignore the ones from .git down below and focus on the first 5. So the first on the list is FileTidy.cli, which is one of the environments, but I'll focus on core. FileTidy.core is a class library, and the major folders here are data, interfaces, models, and services. There's utils as well, but I'll be focusing on a few of them. So the interfaces defines or abstracts the logic, which is then implemented wherever it needs to be implemented. For example, we have the file operation store. So this defines the logic, or rather the methods we expect any SQL, or rather any data store to implement. For example, in FileTidy.data, we have an SQLite operation store. I'll get to this. This implements this file operation store and then implements the method using SQLite, maybe SQLite library, using stop methods and stuff like that, or commands. If I then maybe in the future decide to use my SQL, it still implements the same stuff. So the core library doesn't really care the environments don't really care how it is being implemented behind the scenes. It just makes sure that this is the structure I follow. So if in the future I decide to change things, I do not change these methods. Things still work as expected, but what happens behind the scene is totally different. So here I've got file operation store. I've also got an isort reporter. So this is used to trigger event changes, or this is what the tidying service uses to notify the environment. For example, in the CLI uses this file reporter to output various things in the console, while the GUI uses this to update the UI. We've got a couple of events here, so on file process, on file skips, and the rest. Then we also have the file tidying service. This is used by the core library itself. We've got the file manager. This is also used by the core library itself as well. The operation lookup service is used by the core library itself. I can't really remember, but either the core library or the GUI. I'll have file category map as well. Then over in the models, we've got various models. We've got the tidying result and the rest. Then the services, this is what we implement: the file tidying service and the file operation service, operation lookup service. And in this file tidying service, we have a file category mapper and all the other interfaces which are defined. And here we have the constructor, and this is how the whole stuff works. So in the file tidying service, we sort the directory, revert files, delete files, and the rest. Then moving over to FileTidy.data, I have SQLite. So now this is where I have everything related to SQLite. In this SQLite class, I implement the interface which I showed you guys earlier, which is this interface over here. Our file operation store, and I implement the various methods. I first initialize the connection and create the tables if not existing, and then I have the operations, or rather the implementation of those methods. If in the future I decide to change SQL, or MySQL or PGSQL, or wherever I decide to change to, I still implement the same methods, but the logic behind the scenes differ. Then I have, that's all about that for FileTidy.data. I have FileTidy.data.test. This is for testing these methods here. I've got a couple of tests under this. These are the tests here. I mean, it's a very long file, so yeah, that's all about it. It's testing various cases, the success cases, the edge cases, and the error cases. And then I have my CLI. I'll go through my CLI before I go to the GUI, because the GUI is it's a bit more complex or complicated compared to the CLI. Over here in the CLI, I've got this is a normal console app. I've got the program.cs file. This is kind of an infinite loop unless the user decides to exit. And over here, I've got the host checks to ensure the directory exists. I mean, these are predefined paths compared to the GUI. In the GUI, it's based on the user's selection, stuff like that. But here I kind of did this was the initial version, so I didn't really do much updates here. Over here I don't really want to go into more details about this, so in order not to make this video too long. But I'll just go over to the console sort reporter. This is where I implement the iSort reporter I mentioned earlier as well. And I implement those events and use that to display various things in the console, and as well update the progress bar. Then I have utility methods to help with finding the directory and getting the full part of the directory. I think that's all about that. Then I've got the sorting handler. So this is the main handler that handles the sorting directory. It uses the console sort reporter, the SQLite operation store, and initializes all these classes, and then uses the file tidying service to sort the specified directory, and also logs the operation. Then over to my GUI app. So my GUI app, this is an Avalonia UI app. It's an Avalonia based UI app with .NET as well. Over here I've got my program.cs file, and you have got my app.exml, my various resources set up. I use community.mvvm state management library to handle the whole interactivity and stuff like that. I'll go over to my services where I have the folder service. This folder service is what I use to get the top level folders from your desktop, from your system. I mean, this doesn't really do much. The main stuff is in the main view model, which is over here. The main view model implements the view model base. This main view model handles everything to do with whole interactivities. It's a very long code here. I've not refactored this yet, but it's a bit structured, so it's not too tedious. The main view is the main view app. It's the main view.axml. Here I have the nav bar, the folder panel, progress controls, and the footer. This uses the main view model for its data context. The main view model have got a lot of properties, observable properties, and relay commands as well that are triggered when any button is clicked or anything happens in the UI. So that's all about that for that. Then I've got other stuff that has to do with Avalonia UI. So that sums it all up about how this whole system works. Going into much detail might be longer, but yeah, I'll be covering several aspects of this project. The ones I learned a couple of things that will be useful to you. So stay tuned and keep watching if that interests you. I faced a couple of challenges while building FileTidy, and those challenges made me make better decisions, which makes FileTidy a more resilient and scalable app. Let's dive straight into them one by one. First on the list is the fire and forget pattern in C#. I actually encountered this for the first time. If I didn't build, how would I have learned? So in FileTidy, I use this to load files in the background after they've been sorted. I also use this in the constructor. Since constructors cannot be asynchronous, I had to load the files in the background. A better analogy to using the fire and forget pattern in C# is, for example, you have a registration form and you want to send users a welcome email. Instead of having to do all this in the same process, you can decide to set up the user account, or rather create the account in the database and then send them a welcome email in the background. This way, the user does not have to wait for the welcome email to be delivered. Next up on the list is a retry mechanism with a threshold number of retries and delay intervals between each retry operation. In FileTidy, for example, let's say we try moving a file, but the file wasn't moved. Instead of just telling the user that we couldn't move the file, we can retry that operation multiple times, let's say 3 times, and if after those 3 times we couldn't still move the file, then we can tell the user that this file wasn't moved, and as well, make a system log. Login and rollback support. We've moved the file, so how do we revert it? We log the operation so we can reference it later. What if the log operation fails? That's where a rollback strategy comes in. For instance, we move file X, and in the instance of moving file X, we have to log the operation so we can revert it later on. Now, it could be that the database connection fails, or the SQLite database is corrupted. This way, we try that operation multiple times, and if it fails eventually, we have to roll back file X to its original location. This way, we are tracking every file operation or every file that has been moved. So if a user decides to revert the operation, we can revert it without much hassle. We are sorting user files, but we need to track the sorting operation while it's in process. That's why we use an iSort reporter. An iSort reporter defines a set of events which reporters in our CLI and our GUI has to implement, whereby each of these environments uses a set of libraries specific to these environments to notify the users or keep the users in sync. For example, in the CLI uses events to display certain things in the console, while the GUI reporter uses this to ensure that the UI is interactive during the operation. Last but not the least is the app configuration stored in SQLite. This way we can store various configurations the user decides to make SQLite. There are various things I would like to improve in FileTidy, but I'll just mention a few. The first one being the installation process. Currently, when you open FileTidy, it just opens up without any process of installing it. For good user experience, we're going to need that. Another is you being able to determine categories to sort your files to based on extensions. This way you know where to look for your files after the operation is done. Another is this process running in the background and use certain intervals and when you want this to be run periodically. Another is the use of AI for more personalized based sorting. That's FileTidy, a simple GUI app that enables you to clean your desktop, just like mine, into something better. And if you found this video helpful or this tool useful, you can join the waitlist where I notify you when the public live version is available. Currently there's a test build which you can test, and if you encounter any bug or feedback or any feature you would like me to add, just let me know by sending me an email. If you found this video helpful, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.